we should also seek opportunities for urban food production, which could certainly form the basis of applications in this corridor.
Councillor Sanders.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. I'm just going to be brief and say that I do support this going to public hearing. I think it's certainly ready to go ahead. What I do like about it, it has taken advantage of garden and green and used that as an asset for the units with the patios facing onto that. It's definitely crammed in, there's no question. It's a very dense development. But I do think it's ready to go ahead. There's a lot of features that I think have been offered that are good amenities. And I will also hit on Mr. Whitcroft's comments about food security, which we do keep in mind. And wonder maybe the applicants could see if there's somewhere in the landscaping, and Councillor Brownell has mentioned that too, whether it's raised beds. Or I was recently at a condo development where they just had very large pots sitting throughout the garden, and the residents had the opportunity to just use those as well. So they're attractive, they're, more so than what raised beds are. And there was the opportunity to grow a few veggies and stuff, so I just will throw that out. And it's a small token, but it's a way for people to get their fingers dirty and get a bit of food as well. So I look forward to this going ahead in the public hearing. Thank you.
Council. It looks like it will be. It looks like it will be going to public hearing. Will your comments wait until then?
Well, I'd just like for clarification, Mr. Chair. For clarification, I wasn't suggesting that this particular development would block the central spine. I simply was making the point that to be able to economically afford that central spine, you need as large a development consideration as possible, including as many spaces, as many properties as possible. That's why Gardner Green could do it, because they had all the properties right through between the blocks. My fear is, once we start to chop these up into pieces, no single development will be big enough to be able to afford to provide that spine, and then we lose out. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to comment on that, I think as we look at amenity dollars from larger developments, and if we can't put, whether it's a green space or whatever on that site, I think we should look at those dollars and put them aside so we can purchase or offset costs down the road. It's just something we might consider. Council, all in favor?
I didn't get a chance.
You didn't put up your hand.
I did, so.
Speak. Sorry.
Gee, he's a task puncher. Thank you, Council. There's a lot about this project I like. On the issue of variance, one of the variances is for height. And the reason for that is to put garages in without having to dig into the ground. Without digging into the ground and the cost of that, there's actually a greenhouse gas saving. So some of these variances I thought had a high level of appeal. I did like what Councillor Brownoff and Sanders were saying about the nature of this, the appeal of this. I like the idea of putting the opportunity for residents to grow their own food, maybe some vegetable planting plots. We have to be careful though as prescribing what the residents can do, because you're assuming they're going to grow their tomatoes. Sometimes that doesn't happen. On the issue of bus passes, one per unit, what I've been hearing is feedback on bus passes is they're not necessarily taken up in that way. It may be better to say that in this unit there's X number of bus passes, a certain number, and those who wish to use them could apply for them. And that may get a better uptake, because maybe one unit wants 4 of them, or 2 of them, and the others do not. So I think a bit of flexibility around the bus pass may be something to consider, if my colleagues would consider that. But there's a lot about this project I like. In terms of Councillor Derman's point, I agree completely on some of the things he was saying, and what I think that leads us to is a more profound conversation, bringing our development partners to the table to say, in this area, chaps, what could we do if we take these projects on over the next 5, 10 years? Because certainly to do them individually is very tough. So I absolutely agree that we need vision around some of this local planning and bringing the partners together. I like this particular proposal and I support it going to public hearing. Thank you.
We've asked the question a few times, what is the uptake on bus passes? And I think somewhere along the line, we should do a little checking to see what the uptake is in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th year, or whatever, but at least in the 2nd year. Remember Councillor Bryce made a comment once, maybe we should get him a pair of Nikes instead. But on a serious note, we really if we put money into something, we have to be sure, or try and be sure that it is working for us. It sounds good up front, but a year down the road, is it still working? Council, all in favor? Against? Carried. One against. Councilor Durban. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This next item is 3957 South Valley Drive. It's a covenant amendment. The recorded director of planning is recommending that council support the requested amendment to the subject covenant to eliminate the public pedestrian access. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Council, any questions of staff? Would the applicant like to come forward? Please.
Good evening, Chair, Mayor, and Council and staff. My name is Krishna Clare. I'm the Strata Council President, and with me is Bill Weaver, who's the Vice President. Our firm amendment modification request to the covenant is requesting the right-of-way covenant be amended to eliminate public pedestrian access but allow municipal vehicle access to conduct municipal business, and the right-of-way agreement be amended to allow for parking vehicles along the westerly side of the Strata roadway, leaving the easterly side, which is unusable park side, clear for municipal emergency vehicles. We have continuously heard from some councillors and the community association that South Valley Park needs to be accessible for public use. I would like to point out that in today's meeting agenda package on page 111, there is a December 2014 unsigned opposition letter to our amendment request where the writers, quote, do not believe that there can be much of a problem with the public accessing the park, unquote. As you can see from the photos that we provided in the agenda package for council and public, there is no physical access to the parkland area along the Strata roadway, which is a steep escarpment with overgrown trees, invasive plants, natural vegetation, barbed wire, and other debris, making it unsafe and inaccessible for not only public use but also for our Strata owners. There is not now and never has been maintained by Sanex Parks, contrary to misinformation contained in the unsigned letter written prior to the June 2015 report by Sanex outlining our concerns and presenting evidence in support of our amendment request. At the March 25, 2014 Sanex public hearing, and documented in the minutes, the Parks Department indicated to the applicant for the proposed adjacent development on Wilkinson that this portion of the parkland would be a natural park and not an active neighborhood park for the public. Sanex plans to keep access for maintenance purposes only. Sanex Park staff have indicated to our Strata that the escarpment area is considered as a wildlife corridor and not suitable or intended for public access, and therefore it's very low on their priority list for maintenance. Our objective of our amendment request has always been to reduce the safety problem that exists on our Strata roadway, in particular for children who are vulnerable. To include public pedestrian access to an inaccessible, unusable parkland on a road used for vehicles to access our homes does not make road sense when there is an excellent paved walkway trail nearly 60 feet away that links to the trails to the north side of our homes and is now being linked to the trails on the south side. This amendment will make our development similar to the proposed Strata development, which is adjacent to our Strata roadway. It does not include the public access component in the statutory right-of-way or link our Strata roadway due to the concerns raised by our Strata Corporation. Without approval of the requested amendment, owners will continue to deal with the increased documented safety, privacy, and security issues that continue to exist and have been recognized by the adjacent property. We continue to question the legality of the right-of-way, which is in doubt as the document requires the Strata Corporation to permit safe pedestrian access, prohibit any obstruction on the roadway or vehicle parking. As we have continuously stated in writing and verbally to Sanex Council, the Planning Department, Legislative Services Department, these conditions cannot be met by the owners of the Strata Corporation. The 11 owners of our Strata are pleased with the option 2 recommended by the Sanex Planning Department to modify the covenant to remove the sections allowing public access over and prohibiting parking on our Strata roadway. The approval of the amendment will allow visitors to park on the west side of the roadway, which will still allow for access by municipal and emergency vehicles along the east side. Given the variance to increase density in our development by signage, we have no designated visitor parking. As you can see from the pictures, many of our driveways are too short to allow for a vehicle to park without protruding onto the roadway, which is not permitted under the current right-of-way. This is a serious safety issue, and it is only a matter of time before an accident occurs. Safety of pedestrians, especially children, is a major concern for all owners, as there have been a number of near accidents. We request the mayor and council to agree with the amendment request and the advice of your staff. I will now ask Bill Weaver to provide additional information on this request on behalf of all owners. Thank you.
Thank you, Krishna. I would now like to comment more specifically on the safety concerns of strata owners. The roadway of the 11 strata units runs in a straight line from Unit 1 to the south to Unit 11 to the north. The topography of the roadway slopes towards the center, which is also where the entrance to our complex is located. This provides an excellent, longer, faster run for bikes, scooters, skateboards, etc., and the site of numerous near misses between vehicles and pedestrians, mainly children. Units 3, 4, 5, 6, and 10 have short driveways of approximately 3 meters deep and do not accommodate visitor or service vehicle parking. When vehicles park on their own way, there is restricted vision and a safety hazard related to children using our strata roadway. Owners voiced their concerns to neighbors by hand delivering approximately 50 letters in July 2013 and again in April 2014, immediately following serious incidents of near misses between vehicles and children on our strata road. We are already seeing increased pedestrian traffic on our roadway now that the South Valley Drive road extension and the hard surface parkland path is nearing completion. While we enjoy seeing our youngest neighbors out having fun, we would like to keep them safe. There's also a privacy and security concern for strata owners due to public access on our roadway. Some of the units are situated approximately 1 meter from the strata roadway, which allows pedestrians walking by to look into windows, and owners are forced to keep their blinds closed. Because the strata roadway is without streetlights and adjacent to parkland, it is somewhat secluded and is inviting to crime, in particular vandalism and break-in entry. The strata requested Saanich Police to review up the security of our complex, and we were advised that public access is problematic and the gravel pathway to the north, which links the hard surface parkland trail to our strata roadway, should be removed as it is an inviting entrance/exit to potential crime. Saanich Police advised that these concerns and passed them on to Saanich Planning Department. We mentioned that owners cannot meet the conditions of the right-of-way covenants. We are aware that consent provisions in a document are often implied to carry an unwritten qualifier. That consent will not be unreasonably withheld, meaning that the district might be under an obligation to give fair consideration to our concerns for safety, privacy, and no vehicle parking under the provision, since driveway lengths approved by Saanich cannot accommodate vehicle parking. It is our understanding that the District of Saanich are under an obligation to exercise their discretion in compliance with implied requirement, such as a fair hearing and due consideration of relevant factors. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to council on this item?
Good evening, Allison Ross, 4038 South Valley Drive. speaking on behalf of the Residents Association of Strawberry Vale, Marigold and Glenford. We oppose this amendment, and we feel that the Saanich document does not reflect give justice to our position. Our opposition was based on several grounds. The main issue was lack of documentation. Instead, all we had were statements about concerns with no substance behind them. We questioned whether the proposed remedy would actually solve the purported problem. We also questioned the extent of any problem. We suggest that removing access could be perceived as limiting access to the park and giving a benefit to private property owners. Lastly, given the lack of information, we opted for the conservative approach, namely to represent the public good rather than private interests, since once the covenant is amended, it can't be reinstated. The townhome residents did not approach us to discuss this matter prior to bringing this item to council. That said, we did note in our submission that our view could change if there was additional access to the park from Tulip Avenue, or if the trail previously turned down by council was reinstated. Additionally, should it be demonstrated that there are sufficient legal, liability, and/or nuisance issues related to retaining the existing covenant, then we would support the amendment. But to date, we haven't received that information. To elaborate, lack of documentation and basic information. Usually, if a resident indicates there's a problem, information is gathered, often by the resident, so as to define the extent and nature of the problem prior to jumping to a remedy that may or may not be appropriate. When we were asked to review this application, however, all we had was a list of statements, a number of assertions such as, the covenant may not be legal. Well, where's the legal opinion supporting whether it's legal? If it's not legal, we don't need this discussion. There may be liability issues about insurance. Okay, where's the professional opinion and report? What particular issues? Chapter and verse, please. Skateboarders and cyclists are a problem. How many boarders and cyclists? When and how often? Or are they just using the townhome driveway without accessing the park? There are not even statistics on the number of people accessing the park via the driveway. Will the purported remedy successfully address the issue? If skateboarders and cyclists are the problem, unfortunately, we very much doubt that this will be solved by altering covenants. I don't think they read them. Extent of the problem. We noted that there is no signage that a park exists. There is no signage that indicates there is public access through the townhome driveway. In fact, there is a private driveway sign that's posted that would further deter the public from using this access. Again, where are the numbers? Private interest. Saanich previously chose to eliminate a planned public walking trail in the park, in part due to concerns expressed about privacy from the townhome residents. When council chose to eliminate that trail, several councillors expressed concerns, if you will, or comments with respect to the fact that natural parks are also meant to be available for public access. Access to the park should not be cut off. And it seems clear that the intent of previous councils was to keep the green space as a natural park for all of Saanich. And further, that securing access to the park then should be without undoing rights of way which were created for good reasons. For all the above reasons, we stand by our position that the covenant should not be amended until there is a demonstrated need to do so and other options exist for full access to the park. Furthermore, I'd like to suggest that we would welcome discussions with the townhome owners on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to speak to council?
Thank you. Councillors, Mr. Chairman.
Your name and address, please.
My name is Tony Greaves, and I too am an owner of one of the units at 3957 South Valley Drive. I'd like to make a number of points. Firstly,
Could you come just a little bit closer to the mic, if you can?
certainly.
If you can't, that's fine.
The ideas and proposals presented in the planning stages of the development of the South Wilkinson Valley Action Plan were at first general in nature. As time has passed, what can and cannot be achieved in practice has become more clear. Much has been done and is being done to develop the path along the riparian area as far as Hatfield Road. On the other hand, the public access on our Strata roadway no longer serves the original purpose. It does not provide the expected connectivity and, as we've heard, even constitutes something of a danger to the public safety. At the last Senate Council meeting on this issue, there seemed to be some misunderstanding as to the nature of the parkland to the east of our Strata property. Unfortunately, there still appears to be some misunderstanding. This part of the park is in fact a steep escarpment slope, including a sheer rock face, much of it behind a retaining wall. There is lots of tangled undergrowth, so that it's dangerous, if not impossible, to walk through. It is a green space, there are lots of trees and underbrush, and it is a wildlife corridor, as described by Saanich Parks and Recreation personnel. But the undergrowth also hides barbed wire and other litter. It is not maintained by Saanich Parks for public access. In fact, it's hardly maintained at all. Only every so often they cut down dead branches that present a danger to the homes. So really it is not an accessible park in the generally accepted sense. Allowing pedestrians onto our Strata roadway right-of-way will not give them any safe access to the park. So once again, the connectivity sought in the original planning has been lost. If, at some future time, the intention is to give public access to this currently inaccessible escarpment park, then, at that time, a public path should be made through the parkway itself. And finally, since no public access is to be included in the new townhouse development to the south of us, precedent now exists for the removal of the public access right-of-way on our Strata roadway. So, thank you for allowing me to speak to you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to speak to this item?
My name is Elizabeth Greaves, and I'm an owner at 3957 South Valley Drive, and I would like to make a few points to Chairperson there. councillors and staff. As has already been pointed out, the strata has no spaces that are separately designated as visitor parking spaces. And in addition, the design of the townhouse complex is such that 5 of the 11 driveways to garages are so short that cars or service vehicles that might need to come to attend to plumbing problems or something of that nature, such service vehicles parked on those short driveways necessarily stick out into the strata roadway. And this obviously causes an obstruction. And that is contrary to the current covenant on the strata roadway, which says that there must be no such obstruction. So basically what we're saying is that compliance is not possible with the design of the complex the way it is. And this is evident in the photos that we supplied. It's quite clear that that is in fact the case. That is the evidence that is being sought. I'd like to make the point that the strata roadway has become much more than a pedestrian right-of-way. It's been mentioned before, but I'd like to emphasize this again, that children from the community do use it to play on. They run with dogs off leash, and they use cycles and skateboards on it, and play hide and seek. I saw a young adult on a skateboard the other evening, and he was deliberately trying to go as fast as he could from one end at number 11, right down past the centre, and up the other end to number 1. He was going so fast that if anybody had been reversing out of their driveway, they wouldn't have seen him. They couldn't, and he couldn't stop. So this kind of thing, the slope of the driveway from one end down to the centre where the access is and up to the other end is very attractive to skateboarders and young cyclists. Now, the problem is for us that we can't always see them, and we can't see them in time to come to a stop. It's a difficult problem with the design of the way the garages are. Actually, there have been a good few near misses, and no, I haven't got numbers, but I can tell you that despite our caution and our letters that we've handed out to the neighbourhood, we have still had some near misses. And I can see that an accident is going to happen one of these days. Again, if you could refer to the photos that we did supply, I think it becomes evident the kind of thing I'm talking about. And in fact, as I back my vehicle out of our driveway, I have absolutely no sight line to the north, which makes it very hazardous when people are walking, and again with dogs off leash, or when children are cycling or skateboarding. They can't see the car emerging from the driveway any more than I can see them approaching. It really is a hazardous situation. And just to give you one specific example, when my husband was approaching from the central driveway, about to turn north onto our end of the strata roadway, on one occasion, he found a child zooming down the roadway, and only because he had stopped did the child avoid ending up on the hood of the car. I mean, they really use it as a playground, and we just can't see them coming. So there have been incidences, and we've been very glad that they didn't turn into tragic circumstances. I would like to add, finally, that the public is already served by a very good, safe, wide, hardtop pathway. It's some meters to the west, just on the other side of the complex, and it runs along the very attractive riparian area all the way past the ponds right down to Hatfield Road. Removal of the public pedestrian access to our strata roadway will in fact keep the people of the community much safer. So I urge you to support the amendment, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address council? Anyone else?
evening, Chair, Mayor, councillors, staff. I believe there was 2 councillors here today that were at the beginning of the of this whole development for this whole valley. And I remember, because I've sat through 11 years every Monday night in these chambers. And basically, I remember this very clearly. When this actual complex was being put in, that because the long-term vision or the vision of staff and that was to actually create a greenway all the way up through the valley, a continuous connection. And this development, because of this steep bank on that point, the road right-of-way was given as part access, as part of that trail, because it was so tight between the creek and the bank. So I'm just referring to let you know that at that time the vision was to create a long continuous greenway. Obviously I'm not sure if the properties beside it have finished filling in, but at that time there was a vision to create a green pathway and not just the concrete sidewalk on the side of the road. Thanks. Sorry.
Anyone else wish to speak to council on this item? Council.